Today we are going to install and configure BIND9 DNS on Debian as our secondary DNS server. Hello and welcome back to DK's Lab. This is your boy DK, and today we are going to talk about installing BIND DNS on Debian as our secondary DNS. If you remember, on our previous video we installed BIND9 on Ubuntu as our primary DNS, and now it's time we go ahead and do the installation for our secondary DNS. This one will be quick, short, because most of the details we covered on the previous video. So if you want more details on BIND9 and the configuration files, please go and check the other video on installing BIND9 on Ubuntu, and I will leave the link to that video on the description down below. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and start the installation. So to install, we're going to use the same command we used on the previous video, and that is we are going to install bind utilities, the manual, and the DNS utilities. And that's what we use. Utilities, they give us the commands to use when testing the DNS, that is dig and ns lookup commands. And let's do the installation. Yes. So from here we are going to edit again the default named file, and I'm going to add version 4 at the end of these, because I'm going to be using IP version 4s only, so it should be good. As always, control we're going to restart, and we're going to check the status for named and our service is running. So the next file we're going to touch here is the named conf.option, and as you can see, this file has the default template, so we are going to remove these, and we're going to paste our new config in here. And this is the same config as we did on our primary DNS, except when we are listening, we're going to listen on the local net for this VM, and the IP address for this VM is 9.3, and that's all what is different from the other config. So Control X, yes. Then we are going to modify name.conf.local, and if you remember, here is where we are setting our zones. So we're going to get rid of everything here. Let me deconnect. And these are our zones, as we also did previously, but now we are going to, the things that have changed from the previous one is type. The previous one on our primary, which this is our primary here, if we check here, we had type of master, but now on our slave, type is slave. Then we did allow transfers, and we are using the key to transfer, and now we are stating our master and using the key, which is the same key to access which is the same key on both instances. The same we are doing for the reverse zone, type is slave, for the primary is master, and on the slave we don't have transfer, we only have the master indicated in there. So we are going to exit from that. So now we are going to add the TSIG key on the secondary server, and this is the name as I named on the other side, and that's the key. And if we check on our primary, this key should be the same. Yeah, no, it's not. So let me go ahead and change that line. Change the secret to make sure it's the same, and the name should be similar. And now the server we are going to refer to is our primary, which is 7.3, and we're going to specify the key, and the key doesn't have a dot at the end, so I got some work to do here. Now with the key created, then we need to add this key to the name.conf so that our bind can know our key. And to do that, we're going to add a line here with include and the name for our key. And while we're here, we need to comment the default zones, this line. So if we go a line, we need to comment that line. We don't need those default zones to load. And I'm going to add another comment up here saying we don't need default zones, and that's why they are deactivated. And Control X, yes. Now up to that point, we can take our configurations, and if you remember, the command to check configuration is named -checkconf. So let's do that, and we got errors on our key, so let's go ahead and change that. Let's go ahead and get into this file conf.local, and this is the line that's bringing the error message. And the thing I'm going to do is let me do away with the key and put the IP address for the master, which is 172.16.7.3, and do the same on line 12. 172.16.7.3. Then I'm gonna do away with all that. We're going to Control X, yes, and we're going to check conf again, and that solves our error. So if you want to check for all configurations, again you can use -z, and since we don't have the zone set, and we don't need to configure, if you remember on let me copy this and show you. If you remember on a primary, we did configure these zones, like this one, it is there, and we also did configure this zone. Now on secondary, we don't need to configure this because we are going to request a transfer of these zones to the secondary, and that's why we have a secondary. We don't need to configure everything. It's going to be getting those zones from the primary. So with that, we are going to create we need to create this directory where the transferred zones will be saved, and enable logging. So let's go and do that. So we're going to create the directory /bind zones to store those zones, Once that is done, we are going to allow our firewall. As always, I always enable firewalls on my servers, so I'm going to allow bind, and seems I don't have bind allowed. I don't have firewall set on this server. Let me confirm that. So for some reason I don't have a firewall on this server. I will work on that later. I don't know why I did not enable it, but yeah, let's continue. So the next thing we're going to do is to create the log, to set bind to write logs for the queries, transfers, and so on. And I'm going to first create a directory that bind will be storing the logs. And once we have that done, we are going to change owner bind, and we are going to change owner on that directory. And then we are going to, let me get this one, we're going to create a file on the AT name.conf.log, and we are going to put the following logs in it. This will be a similar setup to the one we did on our primary, and I'm going to uncomment this so that we can use it to test. And with that, we can test, we can check conf and check conf. Those configs are, they look good. So we are going to add, we're going back to named.conf, and we are going to include, so we're going to copy this line, and we're going to paste it here and change these to log. That way we're going to make a bind aware of what the logs configs are. Control exit. Yes. And now the other thing, as you remember, we did as we were installing, when we tried to restart bind, we got an error, and that was because we have to go and edit the app armor configuration to add the bind path, and we need to come down here and add 2 more lines, and those lines are, we go to the end, enter, paste those 2 lines. Those 2 lines are log bind all right, and that one. So those are the 2 more lines to add, and we should be able to save that. And we need to restart that service, and that's restarted. We can restart our service, new named, I think, and we can check status of named. And voila, if you check here, we have got something going on. NS2 zone, this one, transfer status. Let's maximize this guy and see. And it looks we have transferred, we have got the logs transferred already on our, from primary to our secondary DNS. Yeah, transfer status is success. And the same for the, this is for forward zone, and this is for the, what is it, did I get it, Yeah, this is for the reverse zone, and the other one is for the local zone, which is the forward. And I think we're good up to that point. So let's go ahead and do a test for this. So as you can see on the logs, the bind transfer logs on the primary, we already got logs on the log file. And if you remember, when we were doing this video, we had no logs because there was no like any success. So if we also come here and do, let me copy this command again, and use it here, then we also got logs already on our log file indicating the transfers happen. So to do a test here, we can do a quick test like we did on the other video where we did where we're gonna do a dig. No, let's because we enabled this command, let's do a tail for query and we wait to see. Let me Control C and clear the screen first, then tail that, and on here I'm going to use dig at 172.16.9.3, which is our secondary server, and I'm going to dig ns1.dkslab.com, and let's see. So we have a log for that query already going to our secondary DNS, and if you look on our response, we got a response and we got the IP address of this primary DNS. And if you look at the response, came from 172.3.53, and voila, so we are good. So we have both the DNS working, primary and secondary, and now it's the time to link these guys to our Pi-hole so that we can get those queries going through our Pi-hole DNS. So let's do that. So as you can see, if we do a dig ns1 local DNS, our local domain for network server 1 on the Pi-hole, this is our Pi-hole server that I'm using here. If you'll see here, our response is coming from Cloudflare, where our DNS, which is main DNS, which is dkslab.com, is managed at. So that's why it's taking us to Cloudflare DNS, and that's not what we want. We want Pi-hole to be able to route anything that is .local.dkslab to our what do you call it, to our local DNS, the bind DNS. So to do this, we are going to edit a file, and this file is, we're going to use sudo, and I'm going to use nano, and the file is at DNS mask d, and I'm going to use 05 dash local.conf, and let me get my password for this. So, and in this file I'm going to put the following lines. And this is to map our zones, which is local.dkslab, to this server, which is our primary DNS port 53, the same to .93 or secondary, and mapping the reverse zones as well to both primary and secondary. Control X, save that, yes. And now we need to reboot our Pi-hole, and we do sudo pi-hole, I think it should be restart DNS. No, that's not working. So the command that is working is restarting service pi-hole ftl restart. And with that done, let's try to see this, if it's going to return our response. Not yet. And I guess this might take some time before it updates the DNS, because it's still showing coming from my main DNS. But if you do a dig and just specify here at 172.16.7.3, and that one, we're going to get a response from our server 1. As you can see, we got a query. And if we do the same to 9.3, then we should see a log pop up from here on the other side. And yep, and as you can see, the request came from 7.2, which is our pi-hole server. So yep, that's the config to do in there. And I'm going to expect that change to be effective in around 24 hours, or when I reboot all my DNS servers. And that's all you have to do to set up your DNS, the BIND DNS for your primary, both primary and secondary for your local subdomain, and connect them to pi-hole. So everybody who has a DNS connected to pi-hole should be able to query local subdomains and be able to access them, because pi-hole is going to route all the traffic that is local to these two big boys here, the primary DNS and the secondary DNS. Yeah, and that should be it. So from our diagram, we are done with the setup of our network servers. We did the pi-hole. Now we have done the BIND9 and the BIND9 secondary. So I'm going to replicate the settings I've set on our first pi-hole to the second pi-hole, and that should be it for setting up DNS. So next, we are coming back to the sender here, our server, and we are going to set up the virtual machine that will be hosting our Docker. Then we're gonna start installing. We are going to start with installing the Docker, and now start plugging in services as we want now as we go forward. And majorly, that's like almost what we need for our infrastructure. So we are going to install Docker on here, and then we are going to install Portainer and Traffic as part of our infrastructure. Other than those two, the Traffic for reverse proxy and Portainer, I think we should be able to start playing with our setup as it is for home lab, with a clean infrastructure that will be scalable as we go forward. That will make our lives easier. So if you found this video helpful to you, please go ahead and subscribe, like, and share. Also, don't forget to click on that notification bell so that you may receive updates when we upload new videos. Thank you so much. Bye bye.